My daughter's voice cut through the freezing air conditioning of the grocery store like a whip across my back. Do not follow me, old man. Everyone is going to think you are my dad. My name is Robert Mitchell. 68 years of a hard life and silent victory, and in that aisle of imported products, I felt my heart stop for a second, only to start beating again with a different rhythm. She did not know it, but that yell had just awakened a man who had let himself sleep for way too long. I have always loved grocery shopping. To me, picking out a perfectly ripe tomato, smelling the fresh cilantro, or gently squeezing an avocado to see if it is just right is not a chore, it is therapy. But today I was not at the neighborhood market, where everyone knows me as Robert, the king of the grill and homemade sauces. I was at the Grand Pantry, that elegant grocery store in the upscale part of the city, where the floor shines so much it almost feels like a shame to walk on it, and where the price of a piece of artisan cheese pays for an entire family's groceries for a week. I had gone because I wanted to buy a specific truffle oil to prepare a special family recipe. On Sunday, I wanted to surprise Sarah, my only daughter. I was dressed my own way in well-ironed beige cotton pants because of the heat outside, my orthopedic walking shoes, which have seen better days, and a cloth bag I had bought at the local farmer's market. My white hair was combed simply, no dye, no artificial tricks. I am what I am. I have never needed to pretend to be someone else. But there, in that environment of elegant ladies in designer sportswear and sunglasses on their heads, I stood out, and I knew it. However, it did not bother me. Or at least, it did not bother me until I saw Sarah. She was in the wine aisle, with two friends I had never seen in my life. Sarah looked impeccable, I must admit, her hair perfectly straight, her makeup flawless, wearing a dress that must have cost what I used to make in a month of hard work at my old catering company. She was holding a bottle of wine that I knew cost a fortune. My fatherly heart grew warm. We are foolish, are we not? Even knowing that she keeps her distance, that she barely answers my calls. Seeing your daughter well-dressed and smiling gives you tremendous pride. I picked up my pace, pushing my little cart that only contained the oil and a package of pasta. I wanted to give her a kiss and ask if she was coming to Sunday dinner. "Sarah, my sweet girl," I called out with a smile from ear to ear. That was when it happened. Her smile died instantly. Her friends looked at me, then at her, with that raised eyebrow of someone who judges your very soul. Sarah turned red, not red from shyness, but red from rage. She slammed the bottle down in her cart and came toward me. But not to hug me. She came to stop me. "Do not follow me, old man," she yelled loud enough that the soft background music of the grocery store seemed to disappear. "Get away from me. Everyone is going to think you are my dad." What a disgrace. Time stood still. I felt the stares. I felt the weight of every employee's eyes, of every customer burning into my skin. A security guard organizing boxes stopped and looked at me with pity. That look of pity hurt more than the yell. My hand trembled holding the handle of the cart. I opened my mouth to say something, to say, "But Sarah, it is me." But the voice did not come out. My throat was tied in a dry, painful knot. She turned to her friends, laughing nervously, and said loudly, "These people have no shame, huh? You give them a few dollars on the street, and they think they can follow you into the grocery store. This is unbelievable. These people. A few dollars?" No, I was not going to cry. Not in front of these people. Not in front of her. Sarah turned on her heels and kept walking with her friends as if I were a trash bag left on the sidewalk. "Let us go to the other side, girls," I heard her say. The mothball smell just reached over here. I took a deep breath. The air entered my lungs, bringing the artificial scent of the grocery store cleaner. But deep down, I smelled my own dignity. I am Robert Mitchell. I built a catering empire in this city. I sold my company for a fortune 2 years ago, and no one knows, not even Sarah. She thinks I live off my Social Security check and the allowance she claims to give me. But that allowance is actually money that I deposit into her account myself every month so she can manage it for me, just to make her feel useful. The irony of the situation began to replace the pain. Sarah was over there, filling her cart with aged French cheese, Italian cured meats, and vintage wines, things that cost hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars. And how was she going to pay? I reached into my cloth bag and felt my wallet inside. Inside, in a discreet compartment, was the limitless black credit card, the primary card. The one Sarah carried in her purse was the authorized user card, directly linked to my account. I was the one who paid the statement on the 5th of every month. It was my hard-earned money that funded her princess lifestyle. I looked up at the ceiling of the grocery store, then at my hands. They were trembling less now. The deep sadness, that feeling of having failed in raising her, was still there, heavy as an anchor in my chest. But alongside it, a cold determination was born. I had always given Sarah everything. I never told her no. I thought that having lived such a difficult life myself, my daughter deserved to live like a princess. I wanted to spare her the suffering, the hard work, the humiliation of poverty. And what had I created? I had created a woman who was ashamed of her own father, because I did not fit the aesthetic of her life. I had created a monster who humiliated an old man in public just to impress two strangers. But they say it is never too late to teach a lesson, right? If I did not teach her with love and leading by example, perhaps life would teach her with a little bit of reality. I saw the store manager walking by, Mr. Albert. He knew me from way back, from the time when I provided the catering for the end-of-the-year corporate parties for this grocery chain. He did not see me there, hidden behind a stack of bread boxes. Better that way. I needed to remain invisible for just a few more minutes. I pushed my cart again. My steps, previously dragging under the weight of humiliation, were now firm. I was not going to leave. Oh no, I was going to finish my grocery shopping. I was going to buy my truffle oil and go through the checkout. I followed Sarah from a distance, keeping a safe space, camouflaged among the aisles. I saw her putting more and more things into her cart. A jar of caviar. Caviar. My God, this girl does not even like fish. It was all theater, all for appearances. She laughed loudly, played with her hair, talked about trips to the Bahamas that she had never taken but planned to do with her savings. What savings, Sarah? The only money that exists comes from me, and you have never worked a grill in your life. With every unnecessary item she tossed into her cart, my resolve grew stronger. It was not revenge. Revenge is for bitter people, and I am not bitter. I am fair, and what was happening right there was a terrible injustice, not just to me, but to the truth. I reached the produce aisle. I calmly picked out the most beautiful apples. An older lady next to me, also advanced in years, smiled at me. "The fruits look magnificent today, do they not, dear?" "They certainly do, ma'am," I replied, smiling back. "Life can also be beautiful if we know how to choose what we put in our basket." The lady nodded, not quite grasping the weight of my words. I continued my observation. Sarah and her friends headed toward the registers. There were 3 registers open, a priority one with a short line of older folks, and 2 regular ones. Of course, Sarah, in her arrogance of eternal youth, went to the regular register, the emptiest one. She started putting her groceries on the belt. The mountain of expensive products grew. The cashier, a young woman with a tired face, began scanning the items. The beep of the machine sounded like a countdown. I took a deep breath. I adjusted my shirt. I lifted my head. The old man she despised so much was about to do something none of her rich friends would ever do. I walked calmly to the register right next to hers, the priority one. The line moved quickly. As I waited my turn, I watched the scene out of the corner of my eye. Sarah was radiant, chatting with her friends, completely ignoring the total climbing on the register screen. "That will be $850, miss," the cashier said to Sarah. The friends opened their eyes wide, impressed. Sarah, with a smile of someone who thought it was pocket change, opened her designer purse. Of course, honey. Just put it on the card. She pulled out the card, the shiny gold card, the authorized card for Robert Mitchell's account. My heart was beating fast, not out of fear, but anticipation. I had already taken my phone out of my cloth bag. My fingers, which had kneaded thousands of pounds of dough, now slid swiftly across the screen of the banking app. Technology is a wonderful thing, is it not? In the past, you had to go to the bank, talk to the manager, sign papers. Today, with one tap, you resolve your life or complicate the lives of those who deserve it. I saw the young cashier insert the card into the terminal. Sarah tapped her PIN code with her fingernail. Clicking the keys, processing. I looked down at my phone. The temporary lock authorized card button glowed on the screen like a lighthouse. I did not hesitate. My calloused but steady fingers tapped the screen. Lock successful. At the register next to me, the terminal beeped, a low, dull sound. Miss, it is declined, the cashier said without much emotion. What do you mean declined? Sarah laughed nervously. It must be a machine error. Try it again. It is an exclusive card. It has no limit. The young woman sighed and tried again. I, in the line next to her, was already placing my oil and pasta on the belt. The cashier, a sweet lady named Lucy, smiled at me. Good morning, sir, she said warmly. Good morning, my dear. The second beep from Sarah's terminal was louder, or maybe it was just my imagination. Declined again, miss. Do you want to try another card? Silence fell over the small group of friends. Sarah's smile faltered. She started digging through her purse, looking for another card, but I knew she did not have one. The others were maxed out, or they were debit cards with a zero balance. The source, the only true source, had just dried up. This is impossible, she yelled, losing her elegant composure. Your garbage system is broken. I have money. Do you know who I am? People in line started to groan. The shame was switching sides, but the show was just beginning, and I had the best seat in the audience. Right there in the line, less than 6 feet away, I finished scanning my groceries. That will be $12, sir, Lucy told me. I opened my wallet, took out my card, the original one, the primary one. You can run it, my dear. The sound of my approval was a happy beep. I took my bag. Sarah was sweating buckets. Now her friends had already taken a step back, distancing themselves from the embarrassment. Miss, if you cannot pay, I'm going to have to ask you to cancel the transaction and step aside, the cashier said, growing impatient. Sarah looked around, desperate, and then her eyes met mine. I was standing there, holding my simple bag, in my cotton shirt and old shoes. I was not smiling. I was serene. Our eyes locked. She saw the black card in my hand, the twin to the one she was holding uselessly. The recognition on her face was slow, as if her brain refused to accept what it was seeing. She looked at my card, then at hers, then at me. Her mouth dropped open slightly. I took a step toward her, not to save her, not to pay the bill, but to say the phrase that would be burned into her memory. Much more than that yell in the aisle. I stepped very close, ignoring the friends who looked at me with a mix of disgust and curiosity. I leaned against the counter of her register. I placed my hand over the luxurious groceries she could not take home. It seems the few dollars one makes on the street were not enough today, were they, miss? I said, my voice calm but steady as a rock. Sarah turned pale. She opened her mouth to speak. Dad. But I cut her off with a single look. I turned to the cashier, who was looking at me in confusion. Miss, you can cancel her order. I believe she will not be taking anything today. I turned on my heel and started walking toward the exit. My heart was racing, but my legs were steady. I heard the commotion behind me. I heard Sarah stammering, but I did not stop. The first lesson had just been taught, but the crash course in reality was only just beginning. Walking out through the automatic sliding doors, I felt the sun on my face, and I knew it. Robert Mitchell was back in business, and the business now was teaching respect. I got into a taxi, with my legs still trembling, but it was not weakness. It was that shake you get after the adrenaline fades. The driver, a friendly man playing some country music at a low volume, looked at me in the rearview mirror with concern. "Are you all right, sir? Do you want me to turn up the AC? It is blazing hot out there." "I'm doing just fine, my friend," I answered, and for the first time all day, my voice came out clear, without that choked back feeling of tears. "You can head to the old neighborhood. I just need to get home." As the car navigated through the city traffic, I took my phone out of my pocket. It was vibrating nonstop. It was messages and calls from Sarah. "Dad, answer. Dad, what happened? Dad, you cannot do this." Funny how the word old man disappeared from her vocabulary so quickly, making way for a desperate "Dad." I did not answer. I simply flipped the device screen down onto my lap and watched the urban landscape pass by the window. I got home to that apartment in the old suburbs, with its small patio and the tiles I helped lay 30 years ago. The silence of my living room embraced me. It was not a lonely silence like I used to feel before. Today it was a sanctuary silence. I left the bag with the oil and pasta on the kitchen table and went straight to my bedroom. I needed to understand the magnitude of the disaster. I needed to see the raw, naked reality without the filter of fatherly love that had always blinded me. I sat in my reading chair, put on my glasses, and opened the banking app once again. This time, not to lock anything, but to investigate. I used to only look at the final balance, trusting her, thinking Sarah spent on necessities or investments for her future, like she claimed. But right there, with the cold mind of someone who had just been publicly humiliated, I started opening statement after statement. Month by month, for the last 12 months, my stomach turned. It was not just luxury, it was pure waste. Restaurants where a single plate cost over $100, 3-4 times a week. Designer boutiques, beauty salons, wellness spas, plane tickets for weekend getaways to Miami or the Hamptons. And the worst part, cash withdrawals. Massive amounts. $500, $1,000 withdrawn from ATMs in the middle of the night. Where was that money going? I felt dizzy. I had raised a parasite. The fault was mine, of course. I had watered the wrong plant with too much fertilizer. But as I scrolled through the screen, seeing the money from my sweat draining into a vanity sinkhole, something shifted inside me. The sadness gave way to that old fire I felt when a supplier tried to hand me spoiled goods in the catering business. It was Robert the businessman waking up. I got up from the armchair and went to the closet. In the back, behind the shoe boxes and the wool coats I almost never wore, there was a small wall safe. I spun the dial to the combination, ironically Sarah's birthday, and the heavy door clicked open. Inside, there was no jewelry or gold. There was paper. There was power. I pulled out a worn brown leather folder. Inside were the sale documents for Taste and Tradition. My catering company, the sale contract to the international group that had bought my brand, the deeds to the real estate properties I owned. 3 apartments on the south side of the city, 2 commercial spaces downtown, and a plot of land on the coast of Florida. Everything was rented out. Everything generated passive income that dropped into an investment account I never touched. I held those papers and felt their weight. Sarah thought I lived off my Social Security check and a small nest egg. She had no idea that her father, the old man in a cotton shirt, was a millionaire. I had hidden this out of fear that she would lose her way, that she would become a target for people looking to take advantage. But irony is cruel. I had hidden the gold to protect her from the greed of others, and I ended up turning her into the greediest person of them all. I also grabbed my old planner, the paper one with the hard black cover. I flipped through the yellowed pages until I found the contacts I had not used in years. Bernard, my tax attorney, a man who could find a needle in a fiscal haystack. Daniel Reynolds, the bank's general director, who had started as a bank teller back when I was starting out selling food in front of the local high school. I was not a helpless old man. I was a lion who had decided to hibernate, and now hunting season was back. I went to the kitchen to brew some coffee. The smell of the grounds brewing in the paper filter brought a sense of normalcy. While the water boiled, I reflected on how many times I had been underestimated in my life. When I started out, they said a single man with a little girl would never be able to run a business. I did it. When I wanted to expand into weddings, they mocked me, saying I lacked refinement. I studied etiquette, hired the best chefs, and dominated the market. When the venue burned down in 1999, they said it was the end of me. I rebuilt it in 6 months, bigger and better. And now my own daughter looked at me as if I were a piece of old furniture messing up her decor. "Do not follow me, old man," the phrase echoed, but now it hit against a shield. She had not seen the father, she had seen the shell. Society does that to us, does it not? After 60 years of age, we become invisible. No one asks what we know, what we have done, who we defeated to get here. They only see the white hair, the wrinkles, the slower footsteps. They think the brain wrinkles at the same time as the skin. I took a sip of the strong black coffee. The bitterness went down, burning, waking up every cell in my body. Sarah thought she was in control because I left the card in her hands. She thought she owned the apartment she lived in because I never asked for rent. She drove the car that was in my name as if she were a queen in a carriage. She had confused kindness with weakness, generosity with obligation. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 4 in the afternoon. The bank's public operating hours were over, but for clients of my tier, the bank never closes. I picked up my phone. There were 42 missed calls from Sarah and 1 voicemail. I clicked to listen, bringing the phone to my ear. "Dad, for the love of God, the card is declining everywhere. I am at the beauty salon and I cannot pay. The stylist is giving me dirty looks. Fix this right now. You must have pressed the wrong button on your old phone. Call me back." No apology, no "I am sorry," just orders and complaints. She still thought it was a technical error. She still thought I was incapable of operating technology. "You must have pressed the wrong button." I let out a short, dry laugh. "Ah, my daughter." I pressed the exact right button. For the first time in years, I pressed the exact right button. I dialed Bernard's number. He answered on the second ring. "Robert, what an honor. To what do I owe the pleasure of this call after so much time?" Did something happen? "Yes, something happened, Bernard. I woke up." "How are you, Robert?" "Bernard, I need a full audit. I want to track every single dollar that has left my primary account over the last 5 years, and I need you to draft up the repossession papers." "Repossession of what asset?" "The commercial space on Park Avenue, number 200, and the apartment on the 7th floor in the Trendy Arts District." Bernard went silent for a moment. He knew who lived there. "Robert, you are talking about Sarah's apartment, right?" "Exactly. And I want the car, too. That red Mini Cooper is still registered to the company name, is it not?" "Yes, as a fixed asset." "But, Robert, this is going to cause a massive storm. Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure in my life, my friend. The party is over. The free buffet is closed." I hung up the phone with a strange sense of power. It was not revenge, I kept telling myself. It was justice. It was education. I had failed to teach her the value of money and respect when she was a little girl. Now I had to teach her the hard way. I went back to my bedroom and opened the closet. I pulled out a navy blue blazer with an impeccable cut that I used to wear to board meetings. The mothball smell Sarah had complained about did not exist. The garment smelled of lavender and success. I slipped the blazer over my cotton shirt. I looked at myself in the mirror. The person staring back did not have the teary eyes of someone who had been humiliated at the grocery store. He had the firm gaze of someone who had negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts. I tied my hair back into a higher, more austere bun. Tomorrow was going to be a long day. I was not just cutting off the money. I was going to sever the rotten roots to see if the tree still had a chance to be saved. My phone rang again. This time it was not Sarah. It was the concierge of her building, Mrs. Gertrude. an older woman I knew well and to whom I always sent a holiday gift basket. Mr. Mitchell, I am so sorry to bother you. Are you available to speak? Tell me, Mrs. Gertrude. It is just that Miss Sarah arrived just now. She is making a scene in the lobby because her parking access card is not working. She is screaming that it is the building administration's fault. I had forgotten about that detail. The condo association fees were also automatically charged to my card, the one I had locked. I took a deep breath, feeling a tiny pinch of pity, which I quickly crushed. Mrs. Gertrude, the card is not defective. The payment did not clear. Oh, really? And what do I tell her, Mr. Mitchell? She is threatening to have me fired. Tell her, Mrs. Gertrude, that to fire someone, you first have to own something. And tell her the car will have to stay out on the street tonight. Are you sure, sir? It is dangerous. The neighborhood, the world is dangerous, Mrs. Gertrude. She needs to learn to face it without my shield. Good afternoon. I hung up the phone and walked over to the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and purples. The night was going to be tough for Sarah, but it would be the first night of freedom for Robert. I grabbed a pen and a notepad. I started writing down the to-do list for tomorrow. Item 1. Go to the bank in person. Item 2. Permanently cancel the authorized cards. Item 3. Visit the real estate agency. I stopped and looked at the list. Something was missing. Something symbolic. I wrote down item 4. Buy the truffle oil somewhere else, because Sunday's family recipe was getting cooked regardless. But this time, only those who deserved to taste my cooking would be sitting at the table. And for the first time in my life, I was not worried if my daughter's chair would be empty. The pushover dad had left the stage. The patriarch had just taken the wheel, and he was not joking around. I woke up before the rooster even thought about crowing. The analog clock on my nightstand read 4:30 in the morning, but my body was already wide awake, buzzing with an energy I had not felt since the grand opening of my third location. I used the electric Italian coffee maker that I had won in a raffle and had never even taken out of its box. The day demanded practicality and strength, not nostalgia. While the strong aroma of coffee filled the kitchen, I put on my armor. Not the cotton shirt of the grocery store grandpa, but a beige linen suit, sober and elegant, matched with hard-heeled shoes that made an authoritative click-clack on the wooden floor. I hung my reading glasses on a gold chain around my neck and grabbed the brown leather folder. The Robert who flipped burgers stayed at home. The one who walked out the door was Robert Mitchell, former owner of Taste and Tradition. My first stop was not Sarah's house, nor did I call her. Silence is a powerful weapon, and I was ready to use it. I went straight to the main bank branch, the one with armored revolving doors and air conditioning that makes you forget you live in a place that gets blazing hot. Daniel Reynolds was waiting for me in the glass office on the second floor. When I walked in, he stood up immediately. Daniel knew who I was. He had seen my deposits go from food cart sales to multi-million-dollar real estate transactions. Mr. Mitchell, what a pleasant surprise. Would you like some water? A coffee? He asked with that authentic respect that money buys but integrity maintains. I will take a black coffee, Daniel, and I need you to call the head of digital accounts. We are going to do a major cleanup today. I spent the next 2 hours signing papers and authorizing account freezes. I did not just cancel the authorized credit cards. I revoked the power of attorney permissions that gave Sarah the ability to move around certain minor funds. I canceled the auto pay for her apartment expenses, electricity, building maintenance, high-speed internet, the streaming subscription she used constantly. Are you sure about the electricity and maintenance, Mr. Mitchell? Daniel asked, his pen hovering in the air, hesitating. The power shutoffs happen fast these days with those digital meters. I am sure, Daniel, I said, adjusting my glasses. My daughter needs to learn that the lights do not come from a switch on the wall. They come from hard work, and if it is dark, maybe she will finally see something. I walked out of the bank, feeling a sense of duty fulfilled, but my stomach was tied in knots. It is not easy pulling the rug out from under someone you used to carry in your arms, but I remembered her yell in the grocery store. "Do not follow me, old man!" That yell was the fuel I needed to get into a taxi and give the address to Bernard's downtown law firm. On the way, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah over and over again. Text messages blew up on the screen. "Dad, the house internet is shut off." "What is going on, Dad?" "The concierge said the maintenance fee bounced. Are you senile? Did you forget to pay?" "Answer me. I have a brunch with the yoga girls, and my Uber app is rejecting my card." I smirked. Senile. The senile old man was currently sitting in a genuine leather chair in the office of one of the most expensive lawyers in the city, drawing up the strategy to take back what was his. Bernard, a bald man with a serious face who had known me for 30 years, read my notes with a grave expression. "Robert, legally the apartment is yours. The car belongs to the inactive LLC, which is yours. She lives there on a verbal agreement, a favor. You can repossess it at any given moment, but it is your daughter. Exactly because she is my daughter, Bernard, I have raised an emotional invalid. She is 33 years old, and she does not know how much a gallon of milk costs. I need you to draft an out-of-court eviction notice." He opened his eyes wide. "No, Bernard, what an ugly word. Let us call it a request to vacate for personal use. Give her 30 days, and I want the car back in 48 hours. The auto insurance is expired. I saw it in the system this morning. She is driving a car and not paying the insurance. That is liability on my dime." Bernard sighed, but he started typing. The sound of the keys was music to my ears. It was the sound of order being restored to the chaos I had allowed to set in. "Have it delivered by courier today. Right now," I ordered, standing up. I want it in her hands before lunchtime. I left the office and decided it was time to check on the property up close. I asked the taxi driver to take me to the Arts District. I had keys to the apartment, of course. I always did. That famous emergency spare key that Sarah thought was buried in a forgotten drawer. The concierge, Mrs. Gertrude, opened her eyes wide when she saw me step out of the cab. I did not look like the sweet old man who brought her lemon pie. I looked like the owner of the building. "Good morning, Mrs. Gertrude. Is Sarah upstairs?" "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell. She left on foot, furious, about 20 minutes ago. She said she was going to the bank to fight with the manager. The car is still parked out front. It looks like it ran out of gas." Out of gas. A $30,000 car parked like a giant paperweight, because the princess did not have cash for fuel. "Perfect. I'm going upstairs. I need to do an inspection." "An inspection? But Miss Sarah is—" "The owner of the apartment is me, Gertrude. Sarah is just the tenant who forgot to pay rent." I rode up in the elevator. The gold mirror in the hallway reflected a man who was relearning how to love. I opened the door to the apartment myself. The air was stale, closed up. The curtains were drawn, blocking out the magnificent view of the city skyline that had cost a fortune. What I saw inside hurt my fatherly heart, but it triggered a red alarm in my businessman brain. There were designer clothes thrown over the linen sofa, imported shoe boxes piled up on the dining table, leftover delivery food scattered everywhere, gourmet salads left out on the kitchen island, an open bottle of champagne, half empty on the floor near the Persian rug. It was not a home. It was a luxury campsite for a delayed teenager. I walked through the apartment, touching the dusty furniture. The cleaning lady I paid for must not have come today either, since I cut off the weekly wire transfer last night. The irony was palpable. Without the old man's money, the princess lived in a pigsty. I heard the noise of the front door swinging open violently. Fast, angry footsteps rushed into the hallway. "What the hell? Nobody answers me at that garbage bank," Sarah's shrill voice echoed. "And now the dining room light will not turn on. What is this crap?" I was sitting in the main armchair in the living room, with my back to the window in the shadows. "The light does not turn on because the bill was not paid, Sarah." My calm voice filled the space. She jumped, putting a hand to her chest, dropping her purse on the floor. Dad, are you trying to kill me? What are you doing sitting here in the dark? And what is going on? I walked in with my key. Into my house. Sarah huffed, rolling her eyes, that arrogance coming right back as soon as the scare passed. She walked over to the window and yanked the curtains open, letting the midday light flood the living room and illuminate the mess. Your house? Oh, the drama starts. Dad, enough already? The embarrassment you caused me at the grocery store yesterday was not enough? My friends are texting me asking if we went bankrupt. Do you realize what that is? I do realize. Bankruptcy is a strong word, but insolvency better defines your current state. I stood up slowly, smoothing the linen of my pants. I came here to see how you take care of the family assets, and I must admit, I am disappointed. Sarah laughed, a nervous, mocking laugh. Assets? This apartment, Dad, is mine. You gave it to me when I graduated. I gave you the keys to live in it, Sarah. I never transferred the deed. You have never paid property taxes. You have never paid a maintenance fee. You live for free in a property valued at over $1 million, and you treat the owner like he is a beggar on the street. Sarah's face shifted. The reality was starting to sink in, but she was still fighting it. Are you throwing this in my face? Is that it? Because I yelled at you? Oh, for the love of God, Dad. I was stressed. You showed up in those old clothes. That flea market bag. I have an image to maintain. Image? I walked over to the dining table and picked up a Chanel bag tossed on a chair. This bag costs what I used to make in 6 months flipping burgers. You maintain your image with my sweat, but the well ran dry, my daughter. Sarah tried to snatch the bag from my hand, but I held on to it firmly. Give it back to me. Are you crazy? I'm going to call Mom. She stopped, realizing the cruelty of what she was about to say, or perhaps just realizing that she had no one else to turn to. Your mother would be ashamed of the woman you have become. I spoke softly, but every word weighed a ton. I cut it all off, Sarah. The cards, the allowance, the auto pays, the car downstairs. The tow truck is coming to pick it up first thing tomorrow morning, because it is registered to the company, and I requested its return. She opened her eyes wide, panic finally replacing the anger. You cannot do that. How am I going to live? How am I going to eat? You are a college graduate, are you not? From one of the most prestigious universities in the country that I paid for in cold, hard cash. I pointed to the door. There are plenty of job openings out there. I heard the grocery store where you humiliated me is hiring cashiers. Maybe you will learn to value other people's money when you have to hand back change. Right then the doorbell rang. Sarah looked at the door, then at me, confused. Who is it? Did you call the police? No, it should be the courier from Bernard's office. I went to the door and opened it. A young man in a motorcycle jacket with his helmet in his hand held out a large sealed manila envelope. I signed the receipt with my careful, steady handwriting. I closed the door and held the envelope out to her. What is this? Her voice trembled. She did not take the envelope. She took 2 steps back as if the paper were radioactive. It is reality knocking on your door, Sarah. It is an out-of-court notice. You have 30 days to vacate this property. Vacate? You are evicting me from my home? Tears began to roll down her cheeks, but I knew how to tell the difference between tears of sorrow and tears of manipulation. It was the crying of someone who had just lost their favorite toy. I'm repossessing my real estate asset. You can live here if you want, but we will have to sign a lease agreement, market rent, and I cannot be your guarantor. Sarah collapsed onto the sofa, the same sofa where she probably laughed with her friends about the old man following her. She ripped open the envelope, tearing the paper in desperation. Her eyes scanned the legal lines in disbelief. Verbal agreement, revoked, vacate. Dad, this is ridiculous. I am your only daughter. Are you going to leave me on the street? No, you have 30 days, and you have your health and your youth, things I did not have when I was widowed and raised you all by myself. I walked toward the exit, My hand touched the cold doorknob. I wanted to run over and hug her. A part of me was screaming to say it was all a joke, to hand back the card and make her hot chocolate. But the patriarch inside me held the reins. Love must sometimes be surgical, and surgery hurts. "Oh, Sarah," I stopped before walking out, looking at her curled up on the couch, surrounded by luxury that no longer belonged to her. "That truffle oil I wanted to buy yesterday was to make your favorite recipe for Sunday dinner. But I suppose this Sunday you will be too busy looking for a job." I opened the door and walked out. As the elevator descended, I felt my legs tremble slightly, but my soul felt light. The first domino had fallen, and the noise it made was not of destruction, it was of construction. I was demolishing the facade to try and save the foundation. When I stepped out onto the sidewalk, the sun was shining bright. I looked at Sarah's car. My car parked in the visitor's spot, imposing and useless, completely out of gas. I took my phone out of my pocket and dialed the number of the real estate agent who managed my commercial properties. "Hello, Cynthia. It is Robert Mitchell. I need you to appraise the rental value of an apartment in the Arts District." "Yes, that exact one. It is going to be vacant soon, or it will have a tenant who is finally going to pay what she owes." I hung up and took a deep breath of the polluted city air, which to me smelled like freedom. The war was declared, and General Mitchell had just won the first battle without firing a single shot, using only the most lethal weapon that exists. The pen of a father who was tired of being an ATM. The 3 days following my visit to the apartment were filled with a loud silence. My phone did not ring, but news still arrived. Mrs. Gertrude, loyal and a bit of a gossip, gave me the details. The tow truck taking away the red Mini Cooper, while Sarah screamed hysterically in the middle of the street. The friends from the grocery store, the very same ones who talked about the mothball smell, arriving in an Uber to pick up some borrowed clothes, and leaving with their heads down when they discovered there would be no free lunch paid for by my credit card. My daughter's life of appearances was collapsing like a house of cards on a very windy day, and I watched it all from my house in the old neighborhood, with a tight heart, but the clear conscience of someone applying the bitter medicine necessary to cure a severe illness. It did not take long for the counterattack attempt to happen. I knew Sarah would not accept defeat without trying to manipulate me one last time. She set up a meeting, not at my house because her pride would not allow her to step foot in the suburbs, but in Bernard's law office. She thought that bringing some two-bit lawyer, probably an old college friend or someone she met at the gym, would intimidate me. She did not know she was walking into the lion's den dressed as a lamb. I arrived at the office 15 minutes early. The air conditioning was freezing, and the smell of espresso and varnished wood reminded me of the days when I negotiated catering contracts with massive hotel chains. I was wearing a charcoal gray suit and a conservative tie. When Sarah walked in, the contrast was shocking. She wore no makeup, her hair tied in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater. Her lawyer was a young woman who could barely hold on to her briefcase and was sweating buckets, looking at Bernard's legal library behind the mahogany desk. "Let us end this farce, Dad," Sarah said, sitting down without saying hello. She tapped her foot frantically on the floor. "Jessica is here to explain that you cannot evict me, and that I have a right to maintain my standard of living, due to, what is it called? The principle of family solidarity and financial support obligations," the young woman stammered, adjusting her jacket. I took a deep breath and smiled. That calm smile you give a child throwing a tantrum on the floor of the grocery store. "Jessica, right?" Bernard stepped in with the deep voice of someone who has 40 years at the bar. "Before we speak about the law, let us speak about facts. Miss Sarah is 33 years old, in perfect health, holds 2 college degrees, and has 0 physical or mental disabilities. A father is not obligated to financially support fully functional adults." Sarah slammed the table. "He made me this way. He created the dependency. Now he wants to pull the rug out. This is psychological abuse. I am going to sue you for emotional damage. My friends are mocking me. I had to borrow money just to take the subway here. The subway, Dad. Do you realize the smell down there? I realize, Sarah. My voice cut through her tantrum like a sharpened knife. It is the smell of working people. The smell of those who wake up early to build this country while you sleep until noon and spend money you do not have. I opened my leather briefcase. I pulled out not a legal notice, but a folder. I placed it on the table right in front of her. You said I owe you a standard of living, right? Let us see what you did with the standard I gave you. I opened the folder. There were printed photos of the filthy apartment, copies of the parking tickets that came to my company, bank statements showing charges at beauty salons, luxury boutiques, and gourmet restaurants. The lawyer picked up one of the papers, read it, and turned pale. Sarah, you said the money was for basic living expenses. This says Sephora, Dior, Louis Vuitton. That complicates the argument for necessary financial support. Sarah snatched the paper out of her hands. Shut up, Jessica. Whose side are you on? Dad, this is an invasion of privacy. It is an audit, my daughter. I leaned my back against the chair, folding my hands. You have lived your whole life thinking I was an ignorant old man who got lucky selling barbecue. You yelled in the grocery store so everyone would hear that you were ashamed of me. But you never, ever asked yourself where so much money came from. I gave Bernard a signal. He turned on the projector, aiming at the office wall. A spreadsheet appeared with numbers that made Sarah and the lawyer's eyes pop out of their sockets. Do you think I am just rich, Sarah? You have no idea the magnitude of my fortune. I stood up and walked over to the screen. Taste and Tradition was sold for a good amount. It sold for $42 million. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. Sarah opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked at the number on the screen, then at me, then at the number again. Millions, she whispered, her voice fading. Not counting the real estate properties, not counting the stock investments, not counting the real estate funds. I continued relentlessly. I own half of that city block. Where is your building, Sarah? The grocery store where you humiliated me. That building is mine. They pay me rent every single month. The color completely drained from her face. She looked like she was about to pass out. Her lawyer started packing her things into her briefcase, realizing she had walked into a fight with the big dogs holding a chihuahua. You? You own the grocery store building? She asked in disbelief. I do. And Mr. Albert, the manager who saw you screaming at me, he called me yesterday to apologize for the incident. He wanted to ban you from the store. I told him it was not necessary. I told him you would not have any money to do your shopping there anyway. Sarah began to cry. But this time it was not a performance. It was the crying of delayed regret, the crying of frustrated greed. She realized in that exact moment that she had bitten the hand that not only fed her, but that could have given her the world if she had shown the bare minimum of respect and gratitude. Dad, I did not know. Why did you never tell me? Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for my bank account balance. I felt my eyes filling with tears, but I held them back. And the test, my daughter? You failed it miserably. The lawyer stood up. Sarah, faced with these facts and the documentation, I cannot continue. It is a lost cause. Mr. Mitchell, your father has proof of the mismanagement of funds, and the verbal agreement is revoked. I am withdrawing. She practically ran out, leaving Sarah alone in a chair that was far too big for her. She looked at her empty hands, with no designer bag, no rings, no dignity. And now? She asked with the voice of a little girl. Are you going to leave me on the street, Dad? I have nowhere to go. The girls blocked my number when I asked to sleep on their couch. They said they did not want any trouble. I looked at Bernard. He nodded, handing me the final document. I'm not a monster, Sarah. I am your father. But the ATM dad died in that grocery store aisle. I slid the paper across the table over to her. This is my proposal. She took the paper with trembling hands and read the heading. Employment contract. Exactly. I sat back down. I still have contacts. I got you a position in the industrial kitchen of a friend, Carol. You start on Monday at 5 in the morning. A kitchen? 5 in the morning? She made a face of disgust. The old habit trying to return. Take it or leave it. The salary is standard minimum wage, plus grocery and transportation vouchers. With that salary, you can rent a studio apartment on the north side of town. I will pay the first month of rent and the security deposit. After that, it is your problem. Sarah looked up, indignant. You have $42 million, and you want me to peel potatoes at 5 in the morning. I peeled potatoes my entire life so you could drink champagne, Sarah. My voice thundered in the room, making her shrink. Now it is your turn to learn how much a potato costs. It is your turn to feel the back pain and the blisters on your hands. It is your only chance to become a decent person. She looked at the contract, then at me. I saw the internal struggle in her eyes, her wounded pride battling against the need to survive. She looked toward the door, perhaps thinking about leaving and trying her luck on the street, but she knew she would not last a single day. She did not know how to do anything. If I accept, she started softly, can I stay in the apartment? No, the apartment is going to be rented out, and the money will go to a charity that takes care of abandoned elderly people. You will live wherever your paycheck allows you to. Sarah lowered her head, tears falling onto the letterhead paper. You hate me, she sobbed. On the contrary, I love you so much that I am willing to be the villain in your story to save you from being useless for the rest of your life. Bernard handed her a pen, a simple, cheap plastic pen, not the Mont Blanc he used to sign his own documents. Sarah held the pen. Her hand was shaking. She read the clauses. Schedule, subordination, mandatory uniform. No cell phones allowed during service. Every line was a nail in the coffin of the princess she thought she was. I will sign, she said, defeated, but I do not have clothes for this. The uniform is provided, and your shoes must be closed-toe and non-slip. I can lend you a pair of my orthopedic shoes. They are excellent for standing all day. She looked at me, searching for a trace of irony, but only found seriousness. She signed. The scratching of the pen on the paper echoed loudly in the silence of the room. I took back the contract and put it in my briefcase. Welcome to the workforce, Sarah. 200 Industrial Avenue. Monday. Do not be late. Carol deducts from your pay. I stood up and adjusted my blazer. I looked at my daughter, who seemed to have shrunk 4 inches in her chair. Oh, Sarah, I said, already at the door. When you get your first paycheck, if you want to invite me for a coffee at the bakery on the corner, I accept. But we each pay for our own. I walked out of the office with Bernard right behind me. In the hallway, he touched my shoulder. Robert, you are the toughest man I have ever known. A diamond only shines after being cut with force, Bernard. Sarah was a piece of coal that I was trying to polish with cotton. Now we will see if she can handle the pressure. I stepped into the elevator alone. When the metal doors closed, I saw my reflection. I did not see an old man. I saw a man who had just closed the most difficult deal of his life, renegotiating his own daughter's soul. The sense of power did not come from the money in the bank account, but from the certainty that for the first time in years I was truly a father, and not just an open wallet. The old man from the grocery store had disappeared. In his place stood Mr. Mitchell, and the world, including Sarah, would have to learn how to deal with him. I went down to the lobby. I was hungry, hungry for life, and hungry for a good meal that I would gladly pay for myself. But first, I had to stop by the real estate agency. The apartment in the Arts District needed new tenants, people who knew that the view of the city skyline is a privilege, not a divine right. The great cleanup was almost finished, but the final dust still needed to be swept. 6 months. That is the exact time it took for the dust to settle, and for life to find a new direction. They say time heals everything, but I do not agree. time only dries the wound. What heals is our attitude. Today, looking out the window of my makeshift office at the back of the St. Rita nursing home, I see a blooming garden where there used to be only weeds. I planted those flowers with the very same hands that were once rejected by my own daughter in a grocery store aisle. My routine changed completely. The hollow silence of my house in the suburbs was replaced by the noise of construction. The rent from the downtown apartment, which is now occupied by a couple of Belgian diplomats who pay on time and do not complain about expenses, is fully dedicated to the renovation of this nursing home. The place was falling apart, with elderly people living in conditions that made me cry. But Mr. Mitchell is not a crying man. He is a man of action. With the rent money and the dividends from my investments, we replaced the roof, painted the walls in bright colors, and bought new beds, the comfortable kind that embrace tired backs. I am not just the financier. I am there every day organizing the kitchen, fighting with suppliers who want to deliver wilted vegetables. And on Wednesday afternoons, I teach the gentlemen how to play dominoes. They call me the chef, and I love it. It is better than old man, that is for sure. Here, my white hair is a sign of authority, not an expired shelf life. And Sarah? Oh, Sarah. The news came through Carol, my friend who owns the industrial catering business. For the first 15 days, Carol would call me almost crying from a mix of laughter and pity. Robert, the girl does not know how to hold a knife. She cut her finger 3 times peeling carrots, and she just complains. You know, she says the onion smell will not wash off her hands even with soap. I simply listened, my heart tight but firm. Leave her be, Carol. Do not make anything easy for her. If she is late, dock her pay. If she fakes being sick, write her up. The second month, the calls changed tone. Robert, today she arrived on time and ate the employee meal without making faces. It seems hunger finally struck, huh? By the 4th month, a surprise. Robert, you are not going to believe this, but she had a good idea. She suggested changing the layout of the tables to speed up the delivery of the food trays. The girl has a vision for organization. She takes after her father. I promoted her to logistics assistant. Her pay went up $15 a week. I smiled at the phone that day. $15. Sarah used to spend that on a blowout at the salon. Now Carol was telling me she had celebrated it as if she had won the lottery, because it meant she could buy a fan for the studio apartment where she lived on the north side of town. Yes, she was living in a studio without central air conditioning, without a 24-hour concierge, taking 2 buses to get to and from work. I did not see her during all that time. I blocked direct contact so I would not fall into the temptation to help her. The real help had already been given. The reality shock, but today was the day. Today was the 5th of the month, payday. My phone buzzed on the Formica table. A simple text message, no emojis, no drama. Dad, my paycheck cleared. Is that coffee invitation at the bakery still on? I will pay for my own. I felt a chill in my stomach that I had not even felt on the days I signed massive contracts. I replied immediately. Corner bakery at 5 in the afternoon. Do not be late. I arrived at the bakery 15 minutes early. I ordered a black coffee without sugar. I sat there watching the door, anxious. Would she show up in high heels trying to keep up her pose? Would she come to ask for money, saying that the experience was valid, but that she had had enough? When the glass door opened, I almost did not recognize her. Sarah walked in. She was wearing simple jeans, sneakers on her feet, and a white cotton polo shirt. The hair that used to be perfectly straight and full of hairspray was tied up in a simple, practical bun. Her face was clean, without that thick layer of makeup that hid her natural freckles. But what shocked me the most were her hands. The gel nails, long and pointy like claws, were gone. Her nails were short, clean, without polish, the hands of someone who works. She saw me and smiled, a shy, tired, but genuine smile. It was not the smile of I want something, it was the smile of I am here. She walked over to the table and sat across from me. Her scent was no longer that sickeningly sweet, imported perfume that saturated the room. She smelled like regular soap and spices, kitchen smells. "Hi, Dad." Her voice was lower, less shrill. "Hello, Sarah." The waiter came to our table. Sarah looked at the laminated menu with an attention she had never had before. She did the math in her head. I saw her eyes adding things up. "I'm going to have a latte and a chocolate pastry, please," she ordered. "Nothing else, my daughter? Do you not want a slice of cake?" "The cake costs $5, Dad. The pastry's only $2. Today the budget allows for the pastry. I need to save for the electric bill. It came in high this month." I swallowed hard. The lesson had been learned. That sentence was worth more than the $42 million I had in the bank. "How is work going with Carol?" I asked, sipping my coffee to hide my emotion. "It is tough." She sighed, rubbing her shoulder. "My back hurts. My feet swell up. Carol is a general, just like you." She stopped, watching the movement on the street through the glass. "Yesterday we delivered 500 food trays to a construction site. The foreman came over to congratulate us on our organization. He said the food arrived hot for the first time in months." Her eyes sparkled for a second. "I felt good, Dad. I do not know how to explain it. I got home completely exhausted. I ate instant noodles and crashed. But I slept well, no pills, no anxiety. I knew I had earned that money." She took her wallet out of her purse, a cheap canvas bag, and she counted out the bills and coins to pay the waiter who was bringing the order. "Dad," she started, running her knife over the pastry, "I wanted to apologize to you, truly. Not because I want to get the apartment or the car back, but because I remembered something." I stayed quiet, waiting. I remembered when I was about 6 years old. You would come home from the business, smelling like cooking oil with swollen legs, and even then, you would sit on the floor to play with me. I was embarrassed by that smell, you know. And now? Now I have that smell, and I realize that it is not the smell of dirt. It is the smell of hard work. A tear rolled down her face and fell onto the metal table. I reached out and took her hand. Her hands were rough now. They were real hands. "I raised you to be a princess, Sarah. That was my mistake. Princesses are useless in fairy tales. They just wait to be rescued. I should have raised you to be a warrior. But I think life corrected my mistake." "Life and you, right?" She laughed, wiping her face with a paper napkin. "Carol told me about the St. Rita nursing home, about what you do there," Sarah said. "She told me you are renovating everything, Dad. You have a fortune, and you are spending it on the roof of a nursing home." She shook her head, but there was no judgment in her gesture, only admiration. "I used to think money was meant for buying designer bags. You use money to buy dignity for others. I was so foolish." "You were not foolish. You were blind. The blindness of having things too easy. But now, you see." We finished our coffee talking about trivial things. The price of tomatoes, the bus line that changed its route, the evening television show, simple topics, but for the first time they flowed without arrogance, without superiority. I was not talking to a frivolous princess. I was talking to a working woman who knew the value of things. When we asked for the check, I made a motion to take out my wallet. "No," she was quick to stop my arm. "I said I would pay for mine, and I am paying for yours too. My treat." "Sarah, do you not need—" "I do. It is $8 total. I set aside 10. Whatever is left over is for the waiter." She handed over the bill with a pride that shined brighter than any diamond she had ever worn. We walked out of the bakery, and the late afternoon sun cast a golden glow on the sidewalk. The street was busy, people returning from work, packed buses. Sarah checked her watch. "I have to go, Dad. The bus comes in 10 minutes, and if I miss it, the next one is not for half an hour." "Wait!" I opened my cloth bag. Sarah took a defensive step back. "Dad, I do not want money. Seriously, I am managing." "Who said it was money?" I smiled and pulled a small, dark glass bottle with an elegant label out of my bag. Her eyes opened wide. It was the truffle oil. The very same one, the reason for all the confusion in the grocery store 6 months ago. Did you keep it? No, I bought this one today at a little neighborhood shop. Nothing like that fancy store, but the flavor is the same. I placed the bottle in her hands. On Sunday, I am going to make that family recipe at my house in the suburbs. There is no central air conditioning, but there is a ceiling fan, and your dad is there. Sarah held the oil as if it were a trophy. Her lips trembled. Can I bring dessert? I learned how to make a coffee custard that Carol says we could sell. You can, but do not be late. Lunch is served right at 1 o'clock. She hugged me, a strong, tight hug with no disgust, with no fear of wrinkling her clothes. I felt her thin but vigorous body. I felt her heart beating against mine. Thank you, Dad, for not abandoning me, even when I deserved it. A father does not abandon his daughter. A father educates. Sometimes education is a kiss. Sometimes it is an employment contract. She let go, smiled one more time, and ran toward the bus stop. I saw her get onto the crowded bus, grab onto the support rail, and wave goodbye to me through the window. There was no shame on her face. There was life. I stood on the sidewalk watching the bus pull away. My legs, at almost 70 years old, walked with firmness. I did not feel old. I felt eternal. I walked past the St. Rita home. George, not the concierge, but one of the elderly residents, was on the freshly painted patio, watering the plants. "Good afternoon, Mr. Robert," he shouted. "The dinner smells excellent today." "Good afternoon, George. It is beef stew. I asked them to put extra heart into it." I got home, and the silence was no longer empty. It was a peaceful silence. I went to the kitchen and started prepping the vegetables to marinate the meat. As the water ran in the sink, I thought about everything that had happened. Society tries to tell us that after a certain age, our role is to stay in a corner, nice and quiet, without bothering anyone, serving only as an ATM or a babysitter for the grandkids. They yell "old man" as if it were an insult, as if experience were a contagious disease. Sarah tried to bury me in that grocery store, thinking I was a thing of the past. What she did not know is that I am a seed, and a seed, when they try to bury it, that is exactly when it gathers strength to break through the earth and become a tree. I recovered my assets, yes, but the greatest profit was not the millions protected, or the rent from the apartment. The greatest profit was seeing humanity sprout in my daughter's eyes. I dried my hands on the towel and looked at the calendar on the wall. Sunday was circled in red. Lunch with Sarah. Robert the businessman had won the financial battle. Robert the father had won the war of character. And Robert the man, oh, he was just beginning to enjoy the best stage of his life, because there is no age limit on rediscovering your own power. You just need the courage to close your wallet and open the eyes of the people you love. I turned off the kitchen light. The smell of the marinated meat was already starting to spread, promising a Sunday of new beginnings. And for the first time in years, I knew that meal would not taste like guilt or a bribe. It would have the incomparable taste, seasoned with truffle and sweat, of victory. Sunday arrived with a bright sun that did justice to the city's name. I woke up at 6 a.m, not out of obligation, but out of excitement. It was like those Sundays of my youth, when I would open a new store location and the adrenaline would not let me sleep. I brewed coffee in the Italian coffee maker, the one I now used every day. The aroma filled the house, and with it, a sense of fulfillment that I had not experienced in a long time. The kitchen became my battlefield. I pulled out the large pots, the spices I kept in glass jars, my late wife's stained recipe book that held the special family recipe Sarah loved so much as a child. While I browned the meat, chopped the vegetables, and roasted the peppers, I could not help but smile. My hands, those same hands that Sarah had looked at with disgust for their age spots and calluses, were now creating magic. The same hands that had built an empire, that had signed multi-million-dollar documents, that had frozen credit cards and repossessed properties were now peeling garlic with the exact same dedication. By 11 in the morning, the stew was bubbling in the pot, thick and aromatic. I had added the truffle oil at the exact right moment, that touch that transformed a traditional dish into something extraordinary. I set the table. Not the large dining room table I used for the parties back in the day, but the small kitchen table, the formica one with 2 chairs. I laid out the red and white checkered tablecloth I had bought at the flea market, simple but clean plates and silverware that shined not because it was made of silver, but because it was well taken care of. At 12:30, I heard the doorbell. My heart skipped a beat. I went to the door and opened it. Sarah was standing there, but not the Sarah from the grocery store, nor the defeated Sarah from the lawyer's office. It was a new Sarah. She wore a simple floral cotton dress, comfortable sandals, her hair loose with its natural wave. In her hands she held a glass baking dish. "I got here 15 minutes early," she said with a shy smile. I did not want to risk the traffic. "Punctuality," I answered, stepping aside to let her in. "You have already learned one of the most important lessons." She walked into the house and looked around. It was the first time she had been here in years. Before, she used to refuse, saying the suburbs gave her claustrophobia, that she needed her apartment in the upscale part of the city. "It is cozy, Dad," she said, touching the freshly painted light yellow walls. "It smells like home." "It is what it is. It does not have a view of the city skyline, but it has a view of a garden where bougainvilleas grow," she laughed, a genuine laugh. "You know what, Dad? The skyline view was pretty, but I never actually enjoyed it. I always had the curtains closed because the glare bothered me when I watched TV. What a waste." We went to the kitchen. She set the baking dish on the counter. "Coffee custard," she announced proudly. "Carol taught me. She says I have a knack for desserts." She took the lid off the dish. The custard looked perfect, with its dark, shiny caramel. "It looks delicious. I hope it tastes just as good." I served the stew into deep bowls. The steam rose, carrying that complex aroma of peppers, chocolate, spices, and the subtle hint of truffle. Sarah closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. That smell, I have not smelled it in years. "I made it every Sunday when you were little." "I know. I stopped coming on Sundays when I started hanging out with the girls from the gym. They only ate salads and sushi. They said hearty food made you gain weight." She sat at the table, and I sat across from her. "Salads are fine, but they do not feed the soul," I said, serving the warm handmade bread I had baked. Sarah took her first spoonful. I saw how the flavor transported her. She closed her eyes, chewed slowly, swallowed. It is perfect, Dad." Her voice cracked a little. "It tastes like when I was a little girl and I believed you were the most powerful man in the world. And now?" She opened her eyes and looked right at me. "Now I know you are, but not because of the money. Because you had the courage to let me fall to teach me how to get back up." We ate in silence for a few minutes. It was not an awkward silence. It was the silence of two people who no longer needed to fill every space with empty words. "Carol offered me a permanent position," Sarah said, wiping her plate clean with a piece of bread, "with a better salary. She says she sees potential in me to handle the administrative side of the business. And what did you say?" "That I am going to think about it, because I am also—" She paused, nervous. "Also what?" "I am also taking an online course at night. Small business management. It is from the State University. It is free. I thought that, I do not know. Maybe someday I could have my own business. Something small. A coffee shop or a little diner." I felt my chest swell with pride. Do you know how old I was when I opened my first food stand? "How old?" 28, and everyone said I was crazy, that a widower with a little girl could not run a business. But you did it. I did it. And you will do it too, Sarah. Because now you have something you did not have before. What is that? Hunger. Not hunger for food, but hunger to prove what you are made of. We finished eating, and she insisted on washing the dishes. I watched her there at my sink, with her hands in the soapy water, humming a song. She was not using gloves to protect her nails, because there were no longer any nails to protect. There were only working hands. "Dad," she said while drying a plate, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "The apartment downtown, is it true that the rent goes to a nursing home?" "It is true. To the St. Rita home. We are completely renovating it." She stayed quiet for a moment, deep in thought. "Do you think that someday I could go and help? I do not know. On Saturday mornings. I could help in the kitchen or something, unpaid, as a volunteer." I struggled to hold back tears. "I think the gentleman would love that. George is always asking if I have family." "Then I will go next Saturday." We finished cleaning the kitchen, and we sat in the small living room, with the fans spinning above our heads. We tried the custard. It was spectacular. "Carol is right," I said. "You have a knack for desserts." Sarah smiled, but then her expression grew serious. "Dad, there is something I need to tell you, and I do not know how." "Tell me." I I have been going to therapy. Well, it is a free support group at the community center for people who have problems with spending and addiction." I sat up straight in my armchair. "I was not addicted to drugs," she hurried to clarify. "I was addicted to consumerism, to buying things I did not need to fill an emptiness I did not understand. The therapist says it is common in people who never learned the value of hard work." "And is it helping you?" "A lot. It helps me understand why I was ashamed of you. It was not because of your clothes or your age. It was because you represented effort, hard work, reality. And I lived in a fantasy where I believed I deserved everything without doing anything." She wiped away a tear. "I'm so sorry about the grocery store, Dad. Every single day I remember your face when I yelled that, and I am so ashamed. Do not be ashamed of the past. Learn from it. That Sarah died. The one sitting here now is someone new. Do you forgive me?" I stood up, walked over to her, and hugged her. "There is nothing to forgive, my daughter. We just have to keep moving forward." We stayed like that, hugging while the ceiling fan spun and the songs of the birds in the garden drifted through the window. When Sarah left that afternoon, taking the empty baking dish and a bag of leftovers I insisted on giving her, I stood at the door watching her walk toward the bus stop. She walked differently, not with that arrogance of someone who thinks they are superior, but with the confidence of someone who knows what they are worth. I closed the door and went back to the living room. The house smelled like a home-cooked meal, like family, like new beginnings. I sat in my favorite armchair, the one I had bought 20 years ago and that had molded perfectly to my back. I picked up the newspaper, but I did not read it. I sat there thinking about the whole journey we had been on. 6 months ago, in that upscale grocery store, a version of myself had died. Robert the pushover, the ATM dad, the old man who let himself be trampled just to keep the peace. But from those ashes, the real Robert Mitchell had reemerged. The man who had built an empire out of nothing, who had raised a daughter on his own, who had turned flour and sweat into millions. The following Monday, like every Monday, I went to the St. Rita, home early. George was already awake, sitting on the new patio drinking his coffee. "Good morning, Mr. Robert. How was your Sunday?" "It was perfect, George. My daughter came over for lunch." "Ah, that is wonderful. Family is the most important thing. And how is the young lady doing?" "She is learning how to live, and that is the best thing she can do." I went into the nursing home kitchen. I had a meeting with the architect to plan the next phase of renovations, the bathrooms and the heating system for the winter. As I was reviewing the blueprints, my cell phone buzzed. It was a message from Sarah. "Dad, I got home safe. Thank you for the meal and for everything. I love you." 3 words I had not heard in years. "I love you." I did not respond immediately. I stared at the screen, feeling something settle in my chest. Finally, I typed back, "I love you too, sweetheart. I will see you on Saturday at the nursing home. George is excited to meet you." Days passed and turned into weeks. Sarah kept her word. Every Saturday she arrived at the St. Rita home at 9 in the morning. At first the residents looked at her with curiosity, but she quickly won their affection. I saw her helping Mrs. Higgins to knit, listening to Mr. Stevens's war stories, organizing medications with the nurse, but above all, I saw her in the kitchen, wearing an apron, peeling vegetables right beside me, laughing as I taught her the secrets of my grandmother's green sauce. "Do you know what is ironic, Dad?" she told me one Saturday while we chopped onions together. "I spent years of my life and thousands of your dollars trying to escape this." "From what?" "From the kitchen, from manual labor, from simple people. I wanted to be elegant, refined, different, and it turns out that the only thing that makes me truly happy is this: cooking, serving, helping. It is not ironic, Sarah. It is poetic. Sometimes we need to get lost to find our way back home." A month later, Carol called me, excited. "Robert, your daughter's a gem. I just named her shift supervisor. The business is growing, and I need people I can trust. I raised her salary to $3,000 a month." $3,000. To many it was not much. To me it was the most beautiful number in the world, because it represented the value of my daughter's effort. "I'm glad to hear that, Carol. And how is she doing?" "Changed. She is a completely different person. She arrives early, she stays late, she has great ideas, and most importantly, she treats people well. There is no trace of that spoiled brat who walked in here months ago." That night, Sarah called me on the phone. She was crying, but not out of sadness. "Dad, I got promoted, and I am going to be able to rent a bigger apartment, one that has reliable hot water and is closer to work. I will not have to take 2 buses anymore." "Congratulations, sweetheart. You deserve it." "And Dad?" "I was thinking, with the new salary, I can save a little bit. I want to give something back to the St. Rita home. Not much, maybe $100 a month, but I want to contribute." I got a lump in my throat. "You do not have to do that, Sarah." "Yes, I do. Those people taught me something I never learned in my fancy college classes. That dignity cannot be bought with money. It is built with actions." More months passed. The calendar marked 1 year since that fateful day in the grocery store. 1 year since everything changed. Sarah kept working with Carol, but now she was also taking in-person business management classes on the weekends. She had lost contact with the friends from the gym, but she had gained real friends, her co-workers, the neighbors in her new apartment building, the grandparents at the nursing home. One Sunday, after our now traditional weekly lunch, she said, "Dad, I have something to show you." She pulled a folder out of her backpack. She opened it on the kitchen table. It was papers, calculations, a handwritten business plan. "It is my final project for the course, a plan for a small diner. I would call it a taste of home, affordable home-cooked meals for working people. Nothing fancy, just good, honest food." I read the plan. It was well thought out, modest but viable. She had calculated costs, projected profits, identified her target market. "And how would you finance it?" "With my savings. I have saved every penny I could this year. I have $20,000. I know it is not much, but I thought about starting small. A food cart first, then see if I can grow. $20,000 saved in a year on a moderate salary. That meant sacrifice, discipline, vision. And what do you expect from me?" I asked. She got nervous, biting her lip. "Advice? Just that. No money, Dad. I want to do it on my own. But you have experience, and I would like you to be my mentor." I closed the folder and looked her in the eyes. "I have a better proposal." "What is it?" "You put in your $20,000 and your hard work. I will put in another $20,000 and my experience. 50-50 partners, but with conditions." "What conditions?" "You manage everything. I only give advice when you ask for it. The decisions are yours. The profits are split equally. But so are the losses. And if it goes bankrupt, we both lose. And there is no bailout." Her eyes filled with tears. "You would do that? You would trust me with your money?" "I do not trust the little girl who yelled in the grocery store, but I blindly trust the woman sitting in front of me right now." She stood up and hugged me tight. I'm not going to let you down, Dad. I know. 3 months later, we opened A Taste of Home. It was not a fancy restaurant. It was a small space of 200 square feet in a working-class neighborhood, with 6 plastic tables and a menu of 5 different dishes every day. Sarah worked from 5 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. She bought the ingredients at the market herself. She cooked, she served, she ran the register. I went in some mornings to help with the prep work and teach her tricks of the trade. The business started slow, but word of mouth worked. The food was good, the price was fair, the service was friendly. In 6 months, we already had a regular clientele. Construction workers, office clerks, teachers, taxi drivers. One day, a health inspector showed up. Sarah was nervous, but the place passed the inspection with a perfect score. When the inspector left, she sat in a chair and cried tears of relief. I did it, Dad. We passed the inspection. You did it, Sarah. I just peeled potatoes. Today, 2 years after that day in the grocery store, I am sitting at one of the plastic tables in A Taste of Home, drinking a coffee and watching my daughter wait on the customers. It is no longer just one location. Last month, we opened our second spot. Sarah hired 3 employees and is considering a 4th. She is not rich. She makes enough to live with dignity, to save a little bit and keep growing, and she is happier than she ever was, with an unlimited credit card and an apartment with a privileged skyline view. A new customer walks in. It is an older gentleman, humble, wearing work clothes. Good afternoon, what can I get for you? Sarah asks with a smile. What do you recommend, miss? The stew is especially good today. I made it using my dad's recipe. The man looks at the menu, sees the price, and nods. I will take it, and if you do not mind, could I sit with that gentleman over there? He points toward my table. Of course. That is my dad. He would love the company. The gentleman sits across from me. We talk about life, about work, about the weather. 2 old men sharing a bowl of stew. When he finishes, he goes to the register to pay. I watch Sarah ring him up with a smile, hand him his exact change, and thank him for coming in. There is no shame in her eyes as she serves a humble worker. There is pride. Pride in her business, in her effort, in who she is. The gentleman leaves. Sarah comes over to my table. How was it? Perfect, like always. She sits with me for a moment before the next customer arrives. Do you know what day today is, Dad? No. It has been exactly 2 years. 2 years since the grocery store. Seriously? Seriously, and I was thinking, do you want to go with me to that same grocery store? I need to buy ingredients, and the olive oil is on sale. Are you not embarrassed? She laughed. Embarrassed? On the contrary, I want Mr. Albert to see what I have become. I want to walk down that aisle with my head held high, right by your side, and I want everyone to see that I am not ashamed, that I am proud to be Robert Mitchell's daughter. We went that afternoon. We walked into the grocery store together, pushing the cart. Mr. Albert saw us and came over personally to say hello. Mr. Robert, what a pleasure to see you. And Miss Sarah, I heard about your little business. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Albert. And it is not such a little business anymore. We are already up to 2 locations, Sarah answered with a smile. We walked down the aisles. Sarah compared prices, calculated quantities, looked for deals. I saw her so focused, so professional, so completely different from that arrogant young woman from 2 years ago. We walked past the aisle where everything happened. She stopped me and took my arm. Thank you, Dad. For what? For not letting me be useless, for loving me enough to hurt me, for teaching me that life does not hand you anything for free, and that everything worth having requires hard work. You're welcome, my sweetheart. We got to the register. The same cashier from 2 years ago, Lucy, was still there. Mr. Robert, it has been so long. And the young lady? This is my daughter, Lucy. Sarah. Sarah held out her hand. It is so nice to meet you. And I apologize if I was ever rude to you. Lucy smiled, a bit confused, but shook her hand. We scanned the groceries. We paid with Sarah's company card at her insistence, and we walked out. In the parking lot before getting into the taxi, Sarah hugged me. I love you, Dad, and I'm sorry for having been ashamed of you. Let us not talk about the past anymore. Let us talk about the future. When are we opening the third location? In 6 months, if everything goes well. It is going to go well, too, because you learned the most important lesson. That respect cannot be bought. It has to be earned, and you have earned it. We got into the taxi, and as the city rolled past the window, I knew that my job as a father was complete. I had not raised a princess. I had helped forge a warrior, and that is worth more than all the millions in the world.